Hey guys, it's John, quite literally hanging out in the basement this evening, and I've got a couple of friends who I had promised a video on how I create a redundant bridge. So if you know my setup, I've got 2 points of attachment. I've got my primary bridge, which is up over my head, and I've got my redundant bridge, which I also rappel on, attached at a lower point. Now the mechanics of my system aren't important if you're creating a redundant bridge for another purpose. For example, you might be an SRT or DRT climber and you just want a little bit more room when you're doing your ascent. And so I'm going to just show you how I create that. So let me detach it and come in for a little better look here. If you look at that beaner, it moves back and forth, and it's got this property where the lines are folded over in the center. And I'm going to show you how to create that by retying it. So, and it's closed with a hunter's bend. So I'm going to start by untying that. And here's one of the properties I really love about the hunter's bend. It's a secure bend, but this has been holding my weight, and I can break it with relative ease. Just my fingers, a little bit of brute force, and I can untie that. That's the sound of the wood stove in the background. We just loaded her up for the evening. Okay, so now the length that you may need to tie would vary with your setup. I tuned mine for quite a while with a piece of 6-foot cord and settled on a length of 4.5 feet is what I'm going to use to create my redundant bridge. And I'm going to stay right here in the field of view and show you how I do that. So it would seem logical to simply thread this through like that, right? That would seem pretty logical. But I want that crossing point. And so the way that I create this is if I come in this side, instead of going through here, I go around. And that creates this crossing point in the center. Figure of 8. And so that's how I thread it through and make sure that happens. Now I've got a separate video on tying the hunter's bend, and so I'm going to just get right into it here and how I actually tie it. So here's the hunter's bend, which is really just the marriage of 2 interlocking overhand knots. And so I create an overhand loop, create an overhand knot in that fashion with an overhand loop, and the end is coming up. Take the other end of the rope, pass it through the center, it goes over itself, and then I chase the tail of the other overhand knot. That's how I create a hunter's bend. I'll stop and pause there and examine it for symmetry. Turn it around on the back. I like to have, fairly good sized tails, 2.5 inches or so. So that's my hunter's bend, and then I stashed my beaner here on my bridge. So we're going to want to put this bend on one side. I'll put it on the right side, and I find the crossing point. And that's where I put my beaner in. And I love these gridlock beaners because they really keep things situated well in loading and unloading. It's always going to be right where I need it to be. And that's really it. The only other thing that I like to do, and this might not be necessary on your saddle, but if you can see my loops here, I don't really want them falling down. And so I will sometimes, to make sure things stay exactly where I want them. Now there's no load bearing here, but I'll simply take a cable tie. Simply take a cable tie and put that cable tie, not really tight, just put it in. Sorry if I got out of the field of view, but to basically keep it snug with my primary bridge where it goes through my bridge loops. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. And again, I won't make those really tight, just snug enough to keep it in position, and there we go, clipped into my best friend. It's ready to go. In my system, if you recall, if I were to sustain a failure, some catastrophic failure about whatever is above me in the rigging, this redundant bridge would take the load. So here I'll simulate that as we end the video. So it's ready to take load, and I'll be going out of the field of view when I simulate this failure of what's above. And I just fell down, slack above me, and my weight was just assumed by my redundant bridge onto my best friend into the Garda hitch. So there you have it, the JRB method for a redundant bridge, simply using a piece of utility cord tied in a hunter's bend. Thanks and good luck.